It's Premier League All Access, and when I say all access, it's all access from all over the globe, because while Scott and I residing in London heading towards what is a thrilling Premier League week, we've had a brilliant couple of games Tuesday and Wednesday night, recording this Thursday. The Crook Meister is in the USA, in Washington, D.C., ahead of the World Cup draw. And he's already been for a dip in the pool. He's already sampled the delights of the bar. In fact, the first thing you did on landing was send Scott and I a picture of a glass of whiskey. You're such a culture vulture. Not the Washington Memorial, not the White House. A glass of whiskey.
And before he gets in there, it wasn't just a glass of whiskey. That was one photo. The other one was the actual picture of the bar and the barman. And I'm not joking. It's like, if you think about the best library in the world with the brilliant amount of books that it's got, this is exactly what it was like for him. He must have been like a kid in a sweet shop with all those whiskey bottles and gin and vodkas.
It was unbelievable when I walked to the hotel about 10 p.m. local time, obviously a long flight from London. Am I going to go to bed? Am I going to try and stay awake and acclimatise? And as soon as I walked into that bar, I thought, you know what, this is me for a couple of hours. This will get me right back on American time and into the US spirit, literally.
I like the fact that you framed that as if it was ever a question. We've got some massive games this weekend to look forward to, including Aston Villa against Arsenal, which is live on talkSPORT. But it's been a big week of Premier League action as well. And Liverpool failing to back up their West Ham victory with a draw against Sunderland, Scott.
Yeah, Mo Salah again on the bench, which was interesting. And they were just poor, weren't they? They were really poor in the first half. And it's one of those where if you look at the team that he picked, you can't really knock it too much, especially with the players that are available. And you're wanting, the new signings to at some point be given a chance to go and try and play, not just for Liverpool, but actually together in and develop relationships. But, boy, have they lost their mojo. And to be fair, I've got to say, I mean, you don't want to be critical of someone like Virgil van Dijk, but what was he doing on the goal? Why doesn't he engage quicker? And it's just as well they brought on that well-known centre-half Federico Chiesa to save the day at the very end.
It was a terrific effort to get back and help out his team there when they looked as if they were trying to go for the win, Liverpool, and almost conceded a goal which would have condemned them to yet another home defeat. You mentioned Virgil van Dijk. He made a huge mistake in the game against PSG, which sort of started the problems with the thrust of the arm in the air. I know that Crook has sort of talked about him quite a lot, but the big characters aren't really turning up for Liverpool, and that is a real problem. Again, a bit timid in the first half, no real sort of energy in that first 45 minutes. It took until the end before they woke up and tried to fight for it. I mean, it doesn't bode well because their next game is against Leeds United, Crook.
Yeah, although it might help them, it's away from home because I think there's a nervousness and an anxiety about them in front of the Anfield crowd. Obviously, well beaten at home by Forest, PSV, as you've mentioned, and Sunderland, I think, will count themselves unlucky not to take all 3 points because of that late dramatic goal line clearance. So maybe going to Ellen Road, that the pressure will be off somewhat. But it does beg the question, how much of that win against West Ham was down to Liverpool turning a corner and how much of it was down to the fact that West Ham on the day were very poor and made individual errors that cost them the game.
Yes, and Leeds United battered Chelsea on Wednesday night, didn't they? I mean, look, no excuses here. Scott and I, obviously, a little bit frustrated when we saw the team sheet. Did seem rather odd again not to start Garnacho, to start Estevao in a game like this. Listen, I think you have to rest him and you have to play him. You have to get that balance right. But he seems to rest him for the games where they need him to start. And he seems to start him in the games when actually it's probably best if they rest him. And Leeds away is always a tricky one for Chelsea historically. And yesterday was no different, Scott.
Well, look, no one told the Chelsea players clearly the historic fixture that Leeds Chelsea is. And, Ellen Road, I've spoken about it before. I've been there. I've covered it. I've played there. It's just an incredible set of fans when things are going well, when they're behind you. And Chelsea allowed them to get at them physically from the off. And it wasn't just the early goal. It was the physicality that they couldn't handle. Look, I think you've got a lot of managers who have made rotations. And I know that, you can pick on Maresca and certain things. I personally don't think Trevor Chalobah's a right back. I'd play Malo Gusto. But if you look at Reece James, He still needs to be managed. I spoke to Enzo Maresca after the Arsenal game, and he said the centre midfield suits him more because of the physicality and the lack of sprinting. Look at Caicedo; they missed him big time as well. But you have to be up for it when you're playing Leeds United at Leeds United. And in the end, it was 1-0, pass, wasn't doing anything, 2-0, and even at 2-1, he made substitutions. They still had time to come on, but even the likes of Cole Palmer couldn't do anything about that. And Leeds fully deserved it.
Yeah, they certainly did. And you talk about that Leeds crowd being behind the team. It would have been a good idea if Tosin Adarabioyo had realised that Noah Okafor was behind him. But anyway, that's another joke for Panto's season. Villa up to third with a unbelievable victory away at Brighton. Brighton took a 2-0 lead, and then all of a sudden Villa came back and managed to snatch all 3 points. I did not see that coming when they were 2-0 down. And I don't think I saw Christian Romero rescuing Spurs against Newcastle with a fabulous overhead kick and a diving header. I mean, the stuff of dreams for the Tottenham captain.
Yeah, although I don't think it eases much of the pressure on Thomas Frank, because actually the overall performance still wasn't convincing from Spurs. I was listening to your commentary and it felt like a matter of time before Newcastle win the game, and Eddie Howe frustrated that they threw away the points so late. Obviously, there's been a lot of controversy about the penalty. I personally thought it was a penalty. I didn't go along with the boys on the sports bar claiming otherwise. But yeah, disappointing result for Newcastle. Maybe some respite for Thomas Frank. And he made some big calls, didn't he? Mickey van der Ven amongst the subs.
Yes, he was rotating, he said, after the game. Right, that's it for the midweek action. Let's turn our attention to another blockbuster weekend in the Premier League. And we start where we start at 12:30 this Saturday. It's Aston Villa, who have on a brilliant unbeaten run at home, against Arsenal, who haven't lost in 18 games. Well, these tricky games keep on coming for Arsenal, don't they? They're 18 games unbeaten, but physically, the match against Brentford certainly seems to take its toll. But you add in the Bayern Munich game, the Chelsea game into that as well, the North London derby just prior to that. We did say that this period of the season was going to be very difficult for them. And when I spoke to Mikel Arteta last night, he was all about the serious number of games in a short space of time. We have to play at 12:30 on Saturday after a Wednesday night. Then we've got to play Wednesday night again. Then we play Saturday. They've got a week actually in between 2 league games after that. But it is a very congested schedule, and it doesn't help that Mosquera and Declan Rice have picked up injuries to add to those of Saliba and Gabriel, Scott.
Look, I predicted Arsenal at the start of the season to win the title, but I ain't going to feel sorry for them. This is what the Premier League is all about. They have the biggest, best squad. So with the greatest of respect, Mikel, can't moan. There's been other, managers and teams that have come across from Europe and then had to play in the early kickoff, Chelsea being one of them. So, no, look, but it is getting to be a problem. We don't want to hear the bare bones shout, but I watched that game against Brentford, and while they weren't great, they did what title-winning sides do, and that's find a way to win. Without Brentford really laying too much of a glove with them, despite it being 1-0 until really late on. But look, I understand what he's saying. He's probably just sort of getting it out there. I hope he doesn't not saying it in the dressing room, because he doesn't want to sort of put sort of tiredness into the mental side of things for Arsenal. Because there's no doubt about it for me, they are the standout side in the Premier League this season. And if they do what they should do and what they need to do and grind their way to win games, they will go on and win this title by 6 or 7 points.
Yes, I think that the issue is that it's the quick turnaround of games. I think mentally more than physically, sometimes that can impact on you. But he has got a great squad. And look, he only used Ben White for the first time from the start in midweek. Actually, if he's that concerned about rotation, he could have used him before. The same with Christian Norgard, who was on the bench in midweek. Hasn't used him from the start in the Premier League yet. The only games he's started have come in the League Cup and in the Champions League. So there was an opportunity for him to utilise that squad a little bit more if he wanted to, but he decided not to. I mean, Keith Andrews made wholesale changes to his team and left out four of his most influential players in Collins, Henderson, Damsgaard and Thiago, because he felt as if he needed to do that at that time. Look, they were in the game, but like you said, they really, really laid a glove on Arsenal. The only glove that was used was David Raya's to push the ball onto the crossbar from Kevin Schada's header, which was a terrific effort, but Arsenal should have probably have already extended their lead by then. Gyökeres fit, but Merino is still playing up front, Crook, and isn't he doing a very good job? He's been superb. Apart from the dive, he's been superb.
Yeah, a couple of big goals in successive games since Gyökeres was fit for bench duty, so he might have to bide his time before coming back in. You would imagine that Merino will keep his place against Villa this weekend, and he's there on form, isn't he? I still go back to what I said at the start of the season. I think Victor Gyökeres is going to get enough goals this season, but I think they're going to come against the lesser lights in the Premier League. I think when it comes to playing the top teams, and you have to put Villa in that bracket with the run that they're on, then maybe he's not necessarily going to be the man. Just on Declan Rice, by the way, there does seem some confidence from inside the Emirates that injury is not severe and he'll be fit enough to play, which obviously is massive news heading into what I think is a really tricky game for Arsenal.
Yeah, well, it's a massive game, isn't it? Because it does seem kind of weird now that we were talking about Unai Emery's position at the beginning of the season, or certainly even some sections of the Villa support were talking about it after they failed to score in each of their first 5 games of the campaign, or 4.5 of the games of the campaign. The lack of transfer activity was sort of irking everybody at the beginning of the campaign, but they've now gone on to win their last 8 home games in a row. And Unai Emery always has a little bit of extra motivation when he takes on Arsenal after succeeding Arsene Wenger and maybe feeling as if he didn't get the rub of the green, Scott.
Yeah, look, I don't know how much he, has revenge on his mind. I think he just wants to get 3 points. And look, Villa are in incredible form right now. And the team that we're in the time where they're winning games, but you're still saying they're not scoring goals, they go and score 4 at Brighton. And I'm really pleased for Ollie Watkins as well. I think he's a fantastic professional. I think he's a really good footballer, really good striker, who's obviously physically not been quite right, which has affected him. And I thought there were 2 brilliant goals in midweek. 1, a poacher's goal, and then 2, just Ollie Watkins at his best. That ball over the top, great first touch, the ball on the rise, but he keeps it down. It's a wonderful strike. So if he's scoring goals on a regular basis, and Arsenal fans know about Ollie Watkins scoring against Arsenal as well, and Aston Villa are playing really well with the rest of the team, this is what Arsenal's one of the most difficult games of the season. And we've said that a few times already just in recent weeks.
I think everyone will think this is going to be a goal fest, right? Because of what happened in midweek with Aston Villa. They have scored goals recently in games against Bournemouth. A lot of their goals, and I think what Scott's referring to is that I mentioned that a lot of their goals are high tariff goals, right? So they score a lot of goals from outside the penalty area, for example. Actually, in the game against Brighton, they were much better. The goal that comes in from the left-hand side, brilliant ball in, and then a tap in for Ollie Watkins. It's the kind of goal that they've got to try and construct more, I think, because that's where he earns his call and he's much happier in those situations. But Arsenal only had 4 shots on target in the game against Brentford. And I can see this being a little bit of a cagey game, Crook, as sometimes they are when Villa go against the big boys.
Yeah, originally when I was sort of doing my predictions for the weekend, I had this down as a score draw. I've actually just settled on a draw because it wouldn't completely shock me if it was 0-0. I think you look at Arsenal's recent form away from home, obviously dropped points at Sunderland, dropped points against 10 men in the game we were at against Chelsea last weekend. So they're not as formidable on the road as they are at the Emirates. And with Villa in the form, they are 8 successive home victories. Obviously up to 3rd in the Premier League, which is a great achievement, as you've already alluded to, given the start they got off to. I think this is a game where Mikel Arteta might just think, do you know what, get in, get the point and get out again. And let's see what Manchester City and Chelsea can do in response.
Well, Arsenal are unbeaten in 8 away matches in all competition. That game gets underway at 12:30 on Saturday lunchtime, live on talkSPORT. Liverpool back to square one after failing to back up their win against West Ham. Not quite, but it's certainly a couple of steps back. Salah benched again, but maybe we saw a little bit more from Florian Wirtz. He was better in that game against Leeds United. Obviously created the goal as well that saw them get a point out of it. But Ellen Road has become a difficult place to come. And actually, Daniel Farke needs a little bit of credit, doesn't he? Having changed the formation at halftime in the game against Manchester City, stuck with it in the match against Chelsea. He'll do the same against Liverpool at the weekend. And because of Liverpool's most recent form, they've got a chance, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got to try and make the most of it. This is a perfect time to be playing Liverpool. And for Leeds, this is probably the best feel-good factor of their season so far after that fantastic win against Chelsea. And yeah, although he hasn't played a three before, while he's been Leeds manager in the Championship or the Premier League up until that second half of the Manchester City game, doesn't matter. It's not to say he hasn't practiced it in pre-season or at training at some point and they don't know what they're doing. I just want to give just a little bit of a doff of a cap to Goodmanson as well, the left wing back who
did brilliantly
against Esteval, who clearly he had him in his pocket. And, this is a week after Esteval just outshone Lamine Yamal as well. And from a left back's point of view, I thought it was a superb performance. And really, if you win your battles and win your duels up against one of their best players, then that really sends a statement out to the rest of the team and also the fans as well. So, yeah, Leeds will be looking at this and licking their lips and thinking, let's do exactly what we did against Chelsea. Very much on the front foot, start really well, try and get that early goal, and we'll see whether Liverpool can come back.
Physical, intense, take the game to them. It's been the recipe that's hurt Liverpool already this season so far. And certainly Arne Slot is not going to like the approach of long balls and big set pieces being thumped in. Yacobillo scoring from a set piece last night as well. Arne Slot has already said that he doesn't like constant set pieces after set pieces. That might be the modus operandi that Daniel Farke goes towards. I think he deserves a lot of credit because although he hadn't played that formation before, he's been under scrutiny from minute one. Right at the end of last season, everyone was talking about his future. He's obviously they've recruited for a more physically robust team because they believe the physicality in the Premier League is so much greater than that in the Championship. And they're starting to show that a little bit now. It was always going to take a bit of time for some of those like Bornau and Biol to get up to speed. You've mentioned Goodmanson, who's done very well, and Calvert-Lewin and Metja as a front two with a little bit of extra support. That looks more of a threat. And Van Dijk and Konate aren't in the greatest of mind spaces right now.
No, they're not. And just on Daniel Farke, the vibes coming out of Ellen Road heading into this week were that if he lost at home to Chelsea and he lost at home to Liverpool, then that probably would be it. There was talk of Gary O'Neill, which I think had some substance to it on the day of the game. And that's a really difficult situation for the manager because these are matches that Leeds really aren't expected to win. And I've made the point a few times in recent weeks. I don't think they have underachieved Leeds. You look at the money that was spent in the summer, you look at the lack of investment, particularly in the forward areas. I think they're probably about where they should be. And they're out of the relegation places as we're recording this podcast. Obviously, that might change if West Ham get a surprise result against Manchester United. But if they finish 17th, with the resources that he's got, I think he's done really well, Daniel Farke. And I just wonder if we might look back on that second half revival against Manchester City as a turning point, not just in the season, but for his career, because it would be really harsh, even if they lose to Liverpool now, to sack him on the back of two decent performances. The second half against Man City and this game against Chelsea, they absolutely dominated from start to finish.
Well, he could end up taking, realistically, 4 or 6 points from 3 games against City, Chelsea and Liverpool. And I think when you've done that, you deserve a little bit of credit. Where's the turning point coming for Arne Slot, Scott Minto? Because prior to the win at West Ham, which they failed to back up at home against Sunderland, they'd lost 4 straight league games away from home.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I knew that, I'd be manager. If Arne Slot knew that, he would have done it before. I think... No, it is interesting that he put Mo Salah on the bench again when a lot of managers, as I say, were sort of rotating because it is a very tough sort of 3-game week. And it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe it's going to do him a favour here. Mo Salah not around with the AFCON coming up as well, because then the noise will have to go down because he's not there for team selection.
And he can play that slightly different formation where he has Wirtz inside. Okay, didn't work that well actually at the beginning of the game yesterday, but I think that was because of the intention and the intensity. There wasn't enough aggression in the team. But actually, Wirtz playing in the number 10 position is the key to unlocking his skill set.
Absolutely. And do you know what, Sam? Things take time. You don't expect to just throw people together and say, right, you got to be brilliant from word go. It doesn't. You want that to happen, but that's not realistic. It doesn't happen. Wirtz is not a wide player. He hasn't got the pace really there, but he's skillful, he's clever, he can go either way. You want him as that number 10. He was bought as that number 10. He made his name as that number 10. So why would you want to stick him out wide? Try and get him in and just get the right conditions around him and get him to be in that 10. So with him and Isak, it's big. Szoboszlai, I personally think has been Liverpool's best player this season. I mean, you want 11 of him. and they wouldn't be in this problem. He can play right back, he can play midfield, he's playing a little bit slightly wider. But then it's, it takes for everybody else to step up. Look, whoever you are, you're not going to have possession and be attacking all the time. So from a defensive point of view, you have to be bang on it. And they quite simply haven't been, those two centre-halves in particular. I think Joe Gomez being as right back will make things a lot more solid. So, yeah, from Liverpool's point of view, they'd be hoping it'd be more like the West Ham performance than it was like Sunderland.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, not everything can come together with natural chemistry and connection like Matterface, Minto and Crook, even across continents. Usually aided in Crook's case by 1 or 2 glasses of malt whiskey or something else. What are you doing for the rest of the day, by the way, Crook? Have you got like a grand plan? I heard you're going to the basketball, which you know nothing about.
Yeah, I think we're going to go and take a look at the White House this morning. So a little bit of culture. Then I'm going to join the boys.
Not a little bit of culture. That's not culture. It's just looking at a landmark.
Then I'm going to join the boys on Drive. They're doing their show from a sports bar that are also showing the United game. So we'll stay around for that. Then the basketball, as you say, I'm going to meet a couple of FIFA legends along the way. And then obviously it all gears up tomorrow to the big draw.
Okay, well, I'm pleased you're enjoying yourself because I was a little bit worried about you, I must admit, after Tuesday night, because Scotty's been getting a little bit grumpy. He wasn't happy on Saturday, was at Brentford against Burnley. He wasn't happy, 81 minutes with no goals. He wasn't happy. They scored 4 in the last 10 minutes, but it's not the point. He wasn't happy for 81 minutes. Sunday, wasn't happy about the game at Chelsea. He wasn't happy. It wasn't a football match, according to him. Oh. And then on Tuesday night, well, Ian Abrahams was needing an abacus to count the goals that were going in. Crook was bored. He was bored. He weren't happy. And he was trying to get it out of his voice. I could hear him trying to get it out of his voice. What game were you at? I can't even remember. It was so...
He was with me.
Bournemouth 0, Everton 1. But spare a thought for Mrs. Crook because having been rejected admission to a couple
spare
of
a thought for Mrs. Crook quite often, to be honest with you. It's got nothing to do with you taking her to football.
Well, yeah, she wanted to go to a couple of Arsenal games, didn't get in. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll take you down to Bournemouth midweek. We'll go to the Christmas market and then you can come and watch Bournemouth Everton. Should be a decent game, that. It wasn't.
Listen, she had that massive pint pre-match, didn't she? I was very, very jealous while I was stuck in traffic.
Oh, that's good for her. But look, listen, I'm pleased he's had a holiday and he's getting something a little bit different going on in his life because I worried that he was getting a little bit sort of footballed out or something. There was something going on with him. He wasn't enjoying his football as much as he did before. He just needed a mental break, I think. At this time of the season, maybe he just needed a little zhuzh up. And a little trip to Washington will certainly help that. Are you going to go to the Washington Memorial? You're going to go to the capital, the state capital?
Yeah, it's got to be done probably tomorrow morning, I'd have thought.
Do you know what either of those two things are?
Of course, I've done my research. Anyway, should we talk about football?
Right, okay. Let's move on because Manchester City take on Sunderland, Tottenham, Brentford and Bournemouth take on Chelsea this weekend and we're going to get stuck into all 3 of those next. Manchester City edged past Fulham in midweek. They take on Sunderland at the Etihad Stadium. This is going to be a really competitive game if Tuesday night is anything to go by. Look, I know everyone says it was a brilliant game down at Craven Cottage. Of course, the entertainment factor was very high because there was a very late comeback. But at one stage, Scott, City were winning 5-1.
Yeah, but title-winning sides... And look, you win 5-1, you switch off a little bit. Title-winning sides, don't let it get back to 5-4 and You're needing one of your defenders clearing it off the line in the last seconds. So City going forwards, I love watching City. I love Pep. That for me, a bit like Chelsea, but for different reasons, they're a year behind really going for the title. We can talk about them. We can talk about Chelsea. But in terms of realism, where all the teams are, there's only really Arsenal that's ready to win this Premier League title. But look, they're great going forward. They're scoring goals and Erling Haaland's making records. But yeah, defensively, there's still a massive problem there for sure.
Yeah, they're currently second behind Arsenal. But if you look at the points total of Liverpool, not too far behind Chelsea. Chelsea a little bit further back, obviously, because they dropped points away at Leeds in midweek. So do we have to just sort of settle for the fact that actually this is going to be a procession? Or can Manchester City mount a charge, Crook?
No, I think this midweek just underlined for me that Arsenal have pretty much already got the title sewn up. Scott's made the point.
What if they draw like you suggest that they're going to at Aston Villa and Manchester City beat Sunderland?
I'm not sure that's a given that Manchester City beat Sunderland the way that Sunderland have performed this season, already taken points off Arsenal, took points off Liverpool, won at Stamford Bridge. I think this is a tough game for Manchester City. And you look at the goals against column in the Premier League, they've conceded more goals than Villa. They've conceded more goals than Chelsea. I think that defence of Chelsea is a big concern for both you Blue Noses. They've conceded 5 more goals than Crystal Palace, more goals than Sunderland, and only 1 fewer than Everton. You can't leak goals and leak chances with the regularity they do and keep relying on Erling Haaland and Phil Foden latterly to bail you out and win the title. It's not going to happen.
Well, first of all, if you pick Tosin Adarabioyo and Benoit Badiashile at centre-half and Chalobah at right-back, then of course your defence is going to be a little bit of a worry. No disrespect to those people. I just don't think that's the kind of combination that Chelsea needed for an away game against Leeds United. Sunderland, though, could lose a lot of players to the AFCON in the next few weeks. That will be of a concern, but they'll want to leave their mark against a Manchester City team, Scott, who have actually, despite their troubles sometimes away from home, won their last 6 at home in all competitions.
Yeah, I do expect, if this was at the Stadium of Light, then this could be anything and any scoreline. But with it being City at home, look, Sunderland was shown away from home. I was there at Stamford Bridge. They're just the team of the season right now when you think of where they've come from. However, I do fancy City to win this. I probably do fancy Arsenal to only draw at Villa as well, and the gap to be cut to just 3 points. But Arsenal, for me, are ready, despite all the injuries they've got at the moment. I fancy City here. Sunderland, I mean, it's just an amazing job Labrie has done. And the players have really, really stepped up. They've gelled in a way that not many would expect them to. And again, fair play to Crookie. He called it very early, even in pre-season, because they were a million miles away, weren't they? I mean, they shouldn't have even got past the semi-finals of the playoffs, let alone the final. But the job they're doing at the moment, they will stay up. Let's not get too dizzy about them and say that I think they'll be finishing in Europe come the end of the season.
If they stay up, it's a standing ovation.
Yeah, the AFCON coming up will be massive for them, and we'll see where they are after that. But one thing I can say is they ain't going down, and that's a brilliant achievement.
Of course, we're into that time of the year where everyone's talking about the nativity or the festivities. 111 games it's taken Erling Haaland to get 100 Premier League goals. That is biblical from the big Norwegian. But talking of biblical characters, is he still a donkey, Crook?
Listen, there was a good debate, wasn't there? I think actually even during the game on Tuesday night, you were talking to Troy Deeney, maybe it was before the game. Is Erling Haaland the best striker the Premier League has ever seen? And I agree with Troy. No, he isn't. Alan Shearer was a better player than Erling Haaland. Wayne Rooney was a better player than Erling Haaland. Harry Kane is a better footballer than Erling Haaland. But in terms of stone cold killers and goal machines, I think he's out on his own, isn't he? The numbers speak for themselves.
Were all those players better players at the same age as Erling Haaland is? And is Erling Haaland not capable of developing?
I remember Shearer bursting onto the scene at Southampton with that hat-trick against Arsenal. So, yeah, I think you can certainly say that. And obviously Wayne Rooney was doing magical things at 16. It took Harry Kane a little bit longer.
But again, he started his career well, but Wayne didn't necessarily have the longest career. Maybe Erling Haaland might go on. It's difficult to sort of judge, I think, at this stage.
Who would you pay money to watch, Wayne Rooney or Erling Haaland? If you had £100, your last £100.
I like Wayne, so I'd probably play for Rooney. But I've also got sort of a romantic view of Rooney, whereas Haaland, I think. And listen, I kind of agree with you. I think it's slightly different. My view on it is that Erling Haaland is like a brute. He is a mechanical robot of a striker. So he doesn't have as much romanticism as someone even like Nick Voltemade, who looks like he shouldn't be a footballer, but somehow elegantly deals with the ball and manipulates it in a certain way, looks a bit cultish, got a great haircut, is very long and lean and, looks like he's walked out of a 70s show. So there's something sort of cultish about him. So it's different. You get different feels from different players. But in terms of pure numbers, this guy, I mean, crikey, you just cannot put any shade on his name, Scott. He's just unbelievable.
No, and I think come the end of the season, in the way that what we know now, and that's all we can speak about now, what we know of him and how he looks after himself off the pitch, if he stays fit, he'll be up there with Lionel Messi and Ronaldo in terms of numbers. Now, Messi for me was the greatest alongside Maradona. Don't need to go down that route, but in terms of numbers, he will be right up there, and he'll be doing it in the Premier League, which people can argue, and I would argue as well, is more difficult than doing it in La Liga. However, I didn't hear that chat with you and Troy, and I do think Shearer, if you'd have put a young Shearer into this Manchester City side, and I think that's probably the best way to compare it, then I think he would have scored that amount of numbers, and I think he was a better footballer as well. But, he's right up there with the very best this planet's ever seen in terms of finishing.
Okay, let's move on to Tottenham against Brentford. This is going to be a big game on Saturday because it's a reunion for Thomas Frank against his former side. And Brentford will be up for it, won't they? I mean, they'll fancy. There'll be a few players in that Brentford team who think, yeah, come on, we'll show you what you're missing, fella. Romero bailing him out in midweek. Look, the narrative around this game really surprised me. Lots of people saying, well, Tottenham played well. They were resolute. They stuck in the game and then they got the points. I thought they were really poor. They were second best for large portions of this game. They had absolutely no creativity whatsoever. The fact that they relied on Romero to get 2 goals for them to earn them a point, I actually think is probably more an indictment that Newcastle didn't play well enough in the game rather than Tottenham played particularly well. Now, people will have a go at me for that, but I just don't think that they were that good.
Do you know the most damning indictment about Tottenham under Thomas Frank? It's Brentford's team selection at Arsenal in midweek. Now, Keith Andrews got a bit of stick from our own Adrian Durham in our WhatsApp group because he felt he shouldn't have rested the players that he did. But the fact he left Igor Thiago, second top scorer in the Premier League behind Haaland, on the bench until the final half an hour, the fact he took Henderson out the starting lineup, I've got to say, has been brilliant for Brentford, fully justifies his England place. The fact Mikael Damsgaard, their main creator, was on the bench. He fancies this game. Nathan Collins as well, Ethan Pinnock coming in for a rare start. He thinks they can go to Spurs and get something. He obviously didn't feel like they could against Arsenal. And I think he's right, because I agree with you. I don't think Tottenham were good in any way against Newcastle. I think they're very fortuitous to get the draw. Credit for Christian Romero for coming up with a couple of big moments. But I still think there's a lot of question marks about Spurs. And we got the leaks in midweek, didn't we? We sort of preempted them on this podcast. Old players confused by the system and the amount of tinkering that Thomas Frank is doing. No, lads. You finished 17th in the Premier League last season. You are not very good. It doesn't matter who the manager is. You're not good enough to get where Tottenham want to be. And I'm really interested what the owners do in January and the summer, because when Daniel Levy was ousted, they were briefing, we want sporting success. Prove it, go and spend the money and back your manager, because this squad is going nowhere.
And the reason they did that is because they've started to realise that actually, capital-wise, in terms of how much the club is worth, increases with trophies, right? So Manchester City have increased their value and now the second most valuable club in world football because they've been on a fabulous winning run. Chelsea got into the upper echelons by winning trophies. Manchester United, for all of their problems that they've had over the last 12 years since Sir Alex Ferguson left, they've still regularly put trophies on the board. And despite the fact that we take the mickey out of them for having a cash machine in terms of the commercial department and the big megastore at Old Trafford, they have still won. Tottenham need to win, and the owners have decided that is the way to elevate their value so they can eventually sell. That's what they're going to do, guys. Don't pretend that it's not going to happen. That's what's going to happen in the future. However, there is quite a lot of talk about whether or not Thomas Frank is the man to deliver that. And I know that you don't think that they should make any changes here. And I think we all believe that Thomas Frank, given time, will sort it out. But sometimes there is a feeling that clubs just don't fit with managers. Could this be one of those occasions, Scott? Because the fan base feel a little bit funny about him.
Look, we'll start with the negatives. Spurs fans, they either, like any fans really, if you're not winning games, they want to be entertained. And it's not entertaining football at the moment. So I understand where the Spurs fans are coming across. I've said before on many occasions, I'll keep it short. Fans are entitled to do and say whatever they want within legal reason during the game because they pay their hard-earned money for it. But let me tell you, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all if you're booing one of your players. Now, I look at Thomas Frank, and I think this is a natural progression for him. And I think Tottenham can be a great club for him. He's shown we're in the Championship with Brentford. He played really good, exciting football when he had the right players. He went up. He was intelligent enough to realise we have to be a little bit different. We'll be physical. We'll do set pieces. And then we went from a 3 to a 3 and a 4, and then a 4 as Brentford evolved. Now, we're here just a few months in, and we're talking about, and you're right to ask the question because people are saying it. Well, if you keep on saying it enough times, then maybe people will start believing it, that this is not a good fit. Crook is absolutely right. They've taken away the pantomime villain now of Daniel Levy. It's completely down to the new owners. The question is, don't forget Thomas Frank.
It's not new owners. It's not new owners. It's the same owners. It's just a different front man.
Sorry, not new owners. I take that back. They've been owners for a very, very long time.
It's the same people, folks.
Just they're stepping forward from behind the curtains. That's a better way of putting it. The question is, Thomas Frank was appointed when Daniel Levy was still pulling the strings. Now, were they in total agreement or were they not? And if they weren't 100%, then it's down to Thomas Frank to say, I know what needs to be done. You need to stay strong with me. And I hope they do that because I genuinely believe he can get Spurs to where I think they should be. And that's not chasing a Premier League title, but it is chasing a Champions League spot, playing in the Champions League, and also maybe winning a domestic cup as well.
Bournemouth against Chelsea. Amazing what a week can do. Chelsea firmly in the title race after we walked out of Stamford Bridge together on Sunday, Crook, and now they're firmly back out of it again after losing to Leeds. I think it just backs up what I was saying all season and what Scott and I have been talking about all season. This is they're just not good enough defensively. In fact, they're not good enough all over the park, really. They've got a world-class midfield, but their strikers aren't good enough and their defence isn't good enough and the goalkeeper isn't good enough. And their manager is, like the rest of them, learning on the job.
Yeah, and he tinkers, doesn't he? And sometimes the tinkering works, like he did against Barcelona and to a certain extent against Arsenal, and sometimes it doesn't. And obviously I was mid-air, but I'd paid for a bit of Wi-Fi, so I saw your reaction to the team sheet being handed in. You weren't confident against Leeds, and so it transpired. I don't think they are in the title race for the reasons we've said, and it will be a procession for Arsenal, sadly, because Arsenal don't go to Leeds and lose 3-1. They can afford to make changes, and their squad is so deep that it wouldn't really have such a negative impact on the result. In terms of this weekend, I was at Bournemouth, as you've already mentioned, on Tuesday. No wins in 5 now for Andoni Iraola's men, and after a really good start to the season, they're plummeting now into the bottom half of the table. And I asked him after the game for talkSPORT, are you concerned about this run of form? And he said, I wasn't, because against West Ham, we drew 2-2, but we created chances, we scored goals. Against Sunderland, maybe we were a bit naive, but we went 2-0 up and lost 3-2. But he said, this performance concerns me tonight because it wasn't what we're accustomed to in terms of the press. He said, we played the game to suit Everton. They've got a lot of injuries. They've had suspensions as well. Really missed Marcus Senesi against Everton in midweek. So this could be a good time for Chelsea to be going to the Vitality, because when they go through poor runs, Bournemouth, they can be quite a streaky team, and they seem to be on a negative streak at the moment.
And Chelsea are unbeaten in the last 7 meetings with Bournemouth. The tactical battle between the two kind of intrigues me, Scott. Does it not you? I mean, Andoni Iraola, having said what he said to Crook at the end of that game, will have something in his mind of how to approach Enzo Maresca's team. And Enzo Maresca, as we've already sort of talked about, loves to tinker around and try and come up with something. I mean, what I don't want is Maresca coming out after the match and saying, well, I've watched 5 games of Bournemouth this season and they didn't play like that before, so we found it hard to readjust.
Well, to be fair, he did say he had seen Leeds United play with 3 at the back in the second half of the City.
Well, they'd only just done it, so I'd hoped he'd have seen it.
Yeah. So, look, it does make me laugh. The people who are pro Maresca are quite happy to look when the results are good and say, look, that tinkering's good. The people who are anti Maresca turn around and say he tinkers too much. I'm
not anti or pro. What I am is I'm realistic. I'm like, okay, I can see what you're trying to do here. Well done with that. But I can also see when he makes mistakes. And sometimes I think we have to accept that he is in his 3rd season as a full-time manager.
I've been saying this. I think he's shown he's a very talented manager. Just look what he did last season with 2 major trophies and the way they played against PSG in the final. to finish fourth, I think, was an overachievement. Forget the money. Look at the squad. This is the youngest Premier League starting 11 ever. So, look, do I think he picked the right team against Leeds? No, I don't. He might have thought, you know what, let's have sort of as much as we can, as many centre-halves in that back four, plus Cucurella, and we'll try and match the physicality. They didn't. They're not mentally ready for it. I've been saying for the last 2 years, they need some senior pros down the spine of the side, and they haven't got it. And Liam Delap, with the greatest of respect, is a £30 million snip, but he's not ready yet to lead the line for Chelsea and take them towards the Premier League title. So they haven't got that. They haven't got the striker, and they haven't got the defence. Although Robert Sanchez, I've got to be honest with you, I've been a big critic of him. I do think he's getting better and better because he's cutting out the mistakes.
Are you singing the song?
I'm not going to sing the song. You used to be, and now you're all right. It's it's a compliment. But look, sort of. This is a game. I was with Crookie on the Bournemouth game. Bournemouth were really poor. Everton almost throwing players in different positions, and yet they look like they've been playing that role all season. This is a great time to play Bournemouth. I know that Bournemouth, that was their first home defeat of the season, but they were really poor. And now Maresca, like a lot of managers, will look after the 2 games in just a few days. Who's fit? Who's ready for this? Let's play our very best side. And I genuinely believe a really good, well-picked Chelsea side will go to Bournemouth, a difficult place to go, and get all 3 points.
Just a very quick final word on Antoine Semenyo. Obviously, a lot of talk about his future. We know he's got a release clause that becomes active in the first part of January. Liverpool, Manchester City, Tottenham, Manchester United, all keeping tabs on him. The goals and assists have dried up a bit for him during this bad run for Bournemouth. And I do wonder if we're seeing a player who maybe is trying a little bit too hard to impress those suitors, and maybe has come away from doing the basics that actually got him into a position where these clubs were seeking him in the first place.
Yeah, because he's got this release clause, 65 million quid. Liverpool
a little
been
bit less,
touted.
I think. That includes a few add-ons.
That's what everyone's talking about. I know you know what the release clause is, but it's supposed to be a secret, so you're not supposed to tell everyone. And if you talk it down, Bournemouth aren't going to get any money, and you won't be popular going back down there again. But the fact is that, when you have... Listen, and also you have to remember he's playing for Bournemouth. Bournemouth have gone for a period where they've lost 4 of the last 5 games. That's not all on Antoine Semenyo. They're not scoring goals. So his goals and assists are going to dry up. But yes, I understand your sort of point of view. Maybe he's had his gaze just sort of taken away and off the ball a little bit. I mean, I thought what was really interesting about that conversation about Chelsea was that Scott Minto said that Chelsea should win if they pick a well thought out side. I mean, that is kind of the manager's job. I'm just saying.
Once everyone...
I don't mean to be facetious in any way, but
Well, you are, and I throw it out there to other managers who have done exactly the same with the midweek, and some of them it works, some of them it didn't.
Yes, okay. Palmer returned in midweek against Leeds. He was a bit quiet, but he's not going to fly straight away. He missed a good chance, but come on, he's only just come back from a very long time out. He will be fine. We've got live commentary of Arsenal's trip to Aston Villa live on game day from 12:30 on Saturday, doing Derby Leicester at the same time as well in the Championship. We're around the grounds from 2:30. Leanne Sanderson, Alan Pardew and Adrian Durham will take you around the grounds. And then Sunday, Scott and Perry Groves will be with Hugh Wozencroft as they go round the grounds at 1:30. Crook, you're not on Sunday either, are you? Because you're going to be in America.
No, I'm back. I'm back for Sunday, mate. Being the team player I am, I'm flying back Friday night. I even offered to do a game on Saturday, but our football editor told me to take the afternoon off.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you actually turn up for the big weekend games when you couldn't be asked to come on a Friday the other week.
Big weekend games. I'm at Fulham Palace.
Stop being a football snob. I tell you what, he's got a problem, this guy. I'm worried about him. He's fallen out of love with football, this fella. We've got to do something to him, Scott. I don't know what it is.
He's so big time now. That
he is so big time.
He's demanding to go to games that just guarantee goals. Otherwise, he's saying, no, I can't make it anymore.
Yeah, unbelievable. Dear, oh dear. All right, Jet Setter, enjoy your trip to the sports bar, and we'll see you a little bit later on. Scotty, thank you very much for your time and energy this morning. That's Premier League All Access from talkSPORT. We'll be back next Tuesday morning. So we're going to do it after the Wolves-Manchester United game on Monday night. So next Tuesday, we'll bring you another podcast reviewing all the weekend's footballing action from the best league in the world, the Premier League.